can't hate ALS because that was the story that the Lord picked for him.
When things changed, he was still Big R. He was still my husband. He was still your father. He was still Big R. Big R is what he's known to not only the family, but his friends and his church group and everybody. Just
Randall is when it's serious.
Yes. He was tall, he was handsome, and he had a huge smile. But really, the more you got to know him, he was wise, he was kind, and he was a leader.
He was just big, and I mean that from a loving standpoint. He loved big, he fought big, he would always have the best advice. My dad loved to play the guitar, and so he had an okay voice.
Yeah, he did.
He did. He loved karaoke.
He would say he had a really good voice.
He would say, sorry, Dad, you would say he was an amazing voice.
Big R was the president of the South Carolina National Guard Credit Union. I ran into him at a concert at Finley Park. I was walking to the restroom and he stopped me and he was like, "Are you Kathryn?" I was like, "Oh, you're the credit union man." I didn't even know his name. I just remembered him from the credit union. A couple of weeks later, he called me and we went to lunch, and we found out that we had so many things that we enjoyed. We rode bikes, we ran. We really never did any traditional dating. Our engagement was on a lunch break. We decided we were going to go on a trip to the Grand Canyon. So at lunch we went and paid for the trip to the Grand Canyon. On the way back to my office, he said, "I don't feel comfortable traveling with you if we're not married." And I just said, "Well, let's get married." And so that was the proposal.
I knew that if my dad was willing to take that step, that was the person for him. And I will say, Kathryn allowed my dad to be big and fierce. When he retired is when I think we found the fun Big R.
Right.
I think that's when the golfing came into place, and he loved to volunteer. And he had a servant's heart. And I think if I had to say one thing that he always made sure that I knew is when you serve first, you love better. And I think that's how he lived his whole life, even with ALS.
The first signs were he was having difficulty speaking, and he had gotten some braces. In retirement, he decided he needed some braces. And I just kept thinking it was the braces. And he said, "These braces are making my mouth water."
He said, I think I have ALS. This is when they were unsure. And I said, "Dad, that's crazy." I said, "We don't know anybody with ALS." And I said, "It's going to be something just with your speech." I'm thinking it. And I remember when we got the news, and it was devastating.
Mm-hmm. It went very quickly from a little bit of a speech problem with some drooling to nothing by mouth, and no, it could not talk at all.
He would still show up to every track meet. He came to every single football game, but those were his goals. We can't hate ALS because that was the story that the Lord picked for him. And so oftentimes I would always say, "What are the blessings, Dad? Like, what do we see? You know, the sun is shining, that's a blessing. Go put your face to the sun," which is something he would always say.
When things changed, he was still Big R. He was still my husband. He was still your father. He was still Big R.
was so thankful that the Lord showed up, that everybody in that room was going to be okay. And that is what hospice provided. That's why it was just beautiful. And I will say both you and I have changed from the suffering, and I'm thankful for that. But his death, the Lord just glorified us.
I used to tell people, I'm just holding his hand, walking him to Jesus.
He would always say, we're better together. And that was something, even at the end of his life, we knew that we were better together. And hospice was better. Everybody that knew Big R was better together. And that was something that he made people feel the best that they could be.
Mm-hmm.